I request Advocate Siddharth to introduce the speaker and start the session.
Yes, Chetan. Everyone, welcome to today's webinar session. This webinar session is jointly organized by Bar Association of Maharera and Maharit, Mumbai, and RERA Practitioners Association, Pune. I welcome all participants on behalf of Bar Association of Maharera and Maharit, Mumbai. Our President, Advocate Shri Harshad Barbade sir, is also here. I welcome Harshad sir. As you are all aware, the subject of the webinar is title verification and drafting of conveyance deed. How that is important is people face litigation from one generation to next generation regarding title of the property, and therefore considering real estate industry, property matters and RERA laws in which we all are practicing, considering this aspect only, our president has taken decision to call experts from this area so that we all get valuable information. Today we are pleased to welcome Advocate Prasanna Darade sir, a very special guest from the field. He is very well experienced and has specialized expertise in this subject of title verification and drafting of conveyance deed. Advocate Prasanna Darade sir has done his bachelor degree from BSL from Pune University in 1990 with distinction and completed LLB in the year 1992 from Pune University. Started his advocate practice by joining senior advocate Suresh Deshmukh and thereafter Haryani and Company. Got good amount of knowledge related to drafting, pleading and conveyancing. Handled clients from industry of multinational financial institutions, banks, prominent builders and developers, housing society, FDI, land acquisition, etc. Advocate Prasanna Darade started his independent practice in the year 1994, having his main office in Pune and other offices in Nashik, Satara and Kolhapur. Advocate Prasanna Darade over past few years successfully completed large acquisition of land to the tune of more than 10,000 acres in the state of Maharashtra and also completed documentation for more than 1,500 housing commercial development projects in Maharashtra. He has vast experience in drafting and convincing. His law firm is among the top firms in Pune who are engaged in the business of drafting and convincing. It is immense pleasure to invite him to deliver lecture on this subject on which he himself is an authority. Besides, he is also the special counsel for the government of Maharashtra Water Resource Department, handling various matters relating to Koyna Dam project. Now I request our speaker to take over and enlighten us on this subject. Over to speaker, Advocate Prasanna Darade sir. I once again request Prasanna Darade sir to now enlighten us on the subject. All we once again request all our participants to give the importance and take maximum knowledge on this subject, and whosoever is having any question, they can put their questions in chat box. Over to Darade sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. Thank you for your sweet introduction. It's a pleasure to address my colleague lawyers and all others attending this webinar. Basically, I would be discussing on drafting of conveyance and title verification. Before I commence into the actual verification of title and drafting of documents, I would like to quote Sir James Stephen. You would recollect Sir James Stephen was the author of the Indian Evidence Act and also of the Contract Act 1972. I quote him, "In drafting, it is not enough to gain the degree of precision which a person reading in good faith can understand, but it is necessary to attain, if possible, a degree of precision." Hear this. It is possible for degree of precision which a person reading in bad faith cannot misunderstand. This is the crux of drafting of a document. Your document has to be such that even a person reading in bad faith cannot misunderstand the document. Basically, drafting and title verification always go hand in hand. Basically, title verification is what? It is examination and study of public documents and records to determine and confirm the property's legal ownership and to find out the claims and liens in a property. Time memorable, property has been a key for human life and society. Protection of such property rights became important and the system was involved from time to time. Not only the legal provisions were put forth, but a procedure for maintenance of records was also developed. Friends, in days when there was no writing, possession of property denoted ownership. This is the principle which came to be recognized as principle possession is 9 points in law. We would all agree to that. Originally, ownership was transferred when there was nothing to be written by actually handing over the property in presence of witnesses and the vendor applying soil of that land on the forehead of the purchaser. Further, Kautilya in his Arthashastra laid down a procedure for transfer of ownership and maintenance of record. Time and again, things have evolved. How the title passes. Basically, prior to 1950 in Sher Shah's era, prop was converted to money value. Akbar's era, he pioneered the survey of lands. Then came the Maratha Empire, where classification was done and Anewari systems were introduced. Then Shah Jahan, very importantly, there was fixation of assessment. Aurangzeb, for the first time, provided for land revenue in form of tax or lagan. Then our Nana Fatehpur in Maratha regime, he fixed yearly assessment. The most important is Bajirao Peshwa. In his regime, the office of the Mamletdar was established for collection of land revenue. Then, as we all know, came in the British era, coming of the British East India Company into India. Friends, the first land survey was conducted in Pune in the year 1927 by one Mr. Pringle, and he brought in and introduced survey tenures and occupancy tenures, and the regulation was also passed to that. Village maps were created in the year 1838. Survey records came into place. Then came the Bombay Hereditary Office Act of 1874. The most important after that was the Bombay Land Revenue Code of 1879. It established that alienation registers which were made were to be incorporated in that law, basically. Then came in the Bombay Land Revenue Code of 1937. It is the most important fact that from the point of title has to be seen that alienation register here was presumed as a proof of title. Here we find the codification, first codifications being done. Then presently the Maharashtra Land Revenue Code is there and other statutes are there. We can presume that the system evolved basically from possession denoting ownership, traveling to mutation entries, land records as ownership, and transferring of heritable and transferable rights. Friends, judges have now made law, inter alia, that the courts have held that revenue records are mere records of right and title to any property passes on through a title document or by a statute. This is important. If you see earlier, it was alienation register and records of rights passing on title. Now the courts have held those are only entries and title has to be passed by document or by virtue of law. Friends, time memorable, property is always close to our heart. Now, when we come to the term title, it is derived from the Roman word titulus or a French word titere. Basically, a title shows how a person is entitled to a particular property. We as advocates have to check what is good, what is bad, and what is ugly in that title. In the shorter thing, the words good, bad, and ugly can be easily remembered. A good means a good title to the property, bad means a bad title to a property, and ugly, according to me, means it can be or it cannot be cured to good. The present scenario, we have to caution our clients whether the title is good, bad, or ugly. And for this finding of the good, bad, and ugly, in simple terms, is title verification. As advocates, we have to certify a title that XYZ is the owner of the property and he has a clean, clear, and marketable title to it, and which is free from encumbrances. Unfortunately, in India, the land titling bill has not come into force yet. But it's interesting to note section 41 of that bill, which says evidence of title, and the registrar of titles would be considered as evidence of marketable title of the title holder. Unfortunately, it has not come. So as advocates, we have to go ahead checking and verifying the title. A verification of title revolves around three things, basically ownership, possession, and encumbrance. What we have to check, we have to understand basically the ownership, whether it is a single ownership or a joint ownership, whether the possession is actual possession, or he has only a right to possession. He has a right to ownership, but no possession. Encumbrances is a clog on the property, maybe a defect in title, maybe restrictions like some mortgage or under some statute restrictions for transfer. The title investigation basically, according to me, comprises, when we say a total title verification or investigation, it comprises of three aspects. One is searches, then investigation of title deeds and records, and analysis of the same. That is the third. A verification can be divided into two portions or components, that is a prima facie verification and a detailed verification. Both are interlinked to each other. Basically, a prima facie investigation, as I said, is a prima facie and a basic opinion based on title documents that are received by a person and which denote or prima facie show the title of a person to a property. This is there because nowadays no sale deeds or no final conveyances are executed, and prior to it, some LOI, MOUs, agreements are entered. It is followed by a detailed investigation. Friends, I would not discuss the provisions of law of the land and its interpretation, but all lawyers, as lawyers, we have to be very well versed and alert about the latest provisions of law and judicial interpretations. Basically, scrutiny of documents and revenue records is important. Here, we see the nature of the document, including registration, the covenants, some restrictions which are there in it. Next comes in is to verify the 712 extracts, the mutation entries, the public records, consolidation schemes, then Gatwari extracts. No doubt revenue records are never now a document of title, but they show a flow of the title, which is to be co-linked with the title deeds and title documents or a statute by which it has been passed. Further, friends, on the other side, a scrutiny has to be such that it has to go back as long as possible. Searches, when we say searches at sub-registrar's office, 30 years, okay. But title investigation goes as beyond as far as possible, including from years in, at least from 1930, when the records are available at most of the places in Maharashtra. If efforts are taken, you could even go back up to Shivaji Maharaj or the Maratha Empire period in certain cases. Now, when we say scrutiny, it also requires that certain queries would arise. These queries are to be asked to the title holder by way of general queries and by way of special queries. These queries are required and answers to it will give you a flow of title and a correctness to them. Normally, a public notice inviting claims should also be issued or given so as to see it is purchaser beware. So normally a public notice should be published in at least 2 newspapers, one in English and the other in vernacular language, so as to get in claims. The next comes is searches at the sub-registrar's office. Usually, so friends, a 30-year period is a good period for searches, which is normally undertaken by a junior advocate or search clerks. Why is this care or to be taken, searches to be taken in the sub-registrar's office? Is basically to see the title deeds, to see whether there are any other transactions that have transpired in respect of that property. Friends, now the data has been digitalized for a certain period of time, and you can take online searches for a particular period, but for the period prior to it, you have to have physical searches to be done. Next searches are searches in the revenue records. Here we have to now obtain the basic revenue records such as 712 extracts, then the mutation entries, orders passed by the revenue authorities. Because nowadays we have found that certain forged and manipulated documents are also coming in picture. So as to ascertain the correctness, we have to take searches in the revenue department also. Friends, searches are also to be carried out in courts and other forums. Nowadays, since property prices have shot up, litigations have come in, so searches should be taken in the courts to ascertain that no proceedings are there. Searches should also be taken in the registrar of company, registrar of firms. It is to evaluate the correctness of the entity, the persons who are empowered to sign, whether they are directors, whether they are partners, etc., or whether they are competent to enter into a contract on behalf of that juristic person. Friends, I would also advise at this time that there are a number of taxation laws and labor laws which are prevailing in our country, and certain no-dues certificates are required to be obtained from the title holder. An example of that is under the Income Tax Act, Section 281(1) certificate. Once on careful analysis and scrutiny of title documents, revenue records, and also the searches, we have to use our legal acumen to come to a conclusion as to the marketability of the title. We have to check the flow, whether there is any restriction, impediment, or whether any statute prohibits, or whether any person who is competent to that property or who is a member of that property or who holds any right has been left out at any point of time. Because friends, now filing of suits is easy, litigation is also easy, but property is too expensive to ignore it. Friends, I would also suggest that Justice Dhanuka in Ramiklal Kotak versus Varsha Builders, I'll quote it, it is AIR 1992 Bombay 62. Again, I'll repeat, AIR 1992 Bombay 62 is a very important judgment for a person giving a title opinion. It specifies how a title report, how a title certificate should be. Now, the question would be, how do we ascertain whether the title is clear or marketable? It is one's legal acumen, his knowledge and experience on the subject, which would take you through. I would also advise and recommend to juniors and who are coming in this practice field that make it a point to write down everything. If you find anything that you have a doubt on, should be written separately, and then you check out on that. So as to conclude on the title verification, it's important again that as advocates, we have to question ourselves whether the person holding the title has a clear and marketable title, whether there are encumbrances, and whether we issuing the title report do not have any doubts to whatsoever extent. Friends, it is said that a title report or title verification or title certification should be unconditional, but it should be unconditional, also unqualified. But in present days, certain title reports or uh, certificates could be conditional and qualified to a limited extent. That is, a mortgage by a builder or a promoter for obtaining construction finance. Now, once we understand what the title documents are, what the title flow is, we come to the next part of it, that is drafting of a conveyance. Now, drafting of a conveyance is a method in which a deed or a document is drafted. It is now an important branch of law. In our country, friends, conveyancing was never practiced as an art except in certain presidency towns earlier. And we have trained ourselves under the English law or under the English system of conveyancing. Further, friends, the work in India originally was in the hands of scribes or document or deed writers, bond writers. And these bond writers did not have any legal education or training and were only conversant with certain facts and forms which they had in use. And they had by experience, they had a knack of adopting them to their requirement. Friends, the origin of vernacular forms is not known, but forms are very old and have been handled and handed down generation to generation. Now, with the liberalization of the economic policies and globalization in our Indian market, number of transactions and the volume of transactions and the money involved is gone very high. Thus, conveyancing has attained a very important status and aspect in our legal practice. Now, earlier court practice was only a practice that was a prevailing practice. Now, drafting and conveyancing practice is a separate branch altogether. Normally, lawyers who are not specialized in conveyancing generally tend to obtain some drafts from either from books or some precedents or from some friends or now on net and adopt them as they are. And that is the most dangerous part of drafting. One, as a draftsman, should always use his skills in drafting. A knowledge of the meaning of such, we should have the knowledge of the meaning of the English words and maxims, and also the exact requirement of the same in Indian scenario. We should not copy all the English terms, maxims, and try to incorporate them in our document without knowing the actuals and the factuals of them. Unfortunately, in India, no one has tried to simplify the documents, but have adopted the English forms. But that doesn't prevent us from making a good document or a bad document. A good document is a document which will speak in itself and not otherwise. In English law, there was Real Estate Property Act, Conveyancing Act of 81, then the Property Act of 1925, which laid down certain rules of drafting. But in India, as on date, there are no rules of drafting of a document. Now, while dealing with drafting and to transactions, certain important provisions are to be looked into by all the advocates, which would involve acts like the Indian Contract Act, the Transfer of Property Act, the Stamp Act, Income Tax Act, RERA, then the Maharashtra Ownership Act, or the Land Revenue Code, Rent Control Act, Cooperative Societies Act, and so on. We should not also forget the Hindu law, the Mohammedan law, and the laws which prevail and which would affect the title flow. Basically, conveyances are as mostly regarding to an immovable property, and there are a number of definitions in the different acts, but the general definition is immovable property shall include land, benefits to arise out of the land, and things attached to the earth permanently fastened to anything attached to the earth. Registration Act also provides for the definition. Transfer of Property Act, in fact, it does not provide for any definition, but it interprets immovable property as one which does not include standing timber, growing crop, or grass. Friends, we have to also understand the rights attached to an immovable property and also its limitations and restrictions. And the same is very important part in our practice of conveyancing. We have to understand what is a bundle of rights. It is, in common phrase, the various complexities attached to ownership of immovable properties. The bundle of rights would be right to enter, right to possess, right to sell, right to transfer, right to earn, right to change, subdivide, and now a new right has also come in. That's the right of TDR, transferable development rights. There are certain limitations also which are embedded in the bundle of rights. Those are restrictions and encumbrances like government reservations or easementary rights which are there, adverse possessions are there, right of preemption and first refusals, right of by virtue of some personal law. While drafting, these are the important aspects one has to take into consideration or has to have knowledge about, so that the transaction can be taken to a logical end neatly and properly. As I have earlier said, we have to look into the flow of title, the title documents, the restrictions, to even commence the drafting of a document. Friends, in English practice, a conveyance was written in one para without punctuations. Later on, a practice came into dividing it into paragraphs. A division of a conveyance in paragraphs is easy, and this practice is recommended because it makes the document more clear. Friends, a free use of punctuation marks or blanks is not desirable in a conveyance, save and except you put a full stop or a semicolon at the end of a proper paragraph. But otherwise, no punctuation marks should be there. Your conveyance deed should never be blank, contain any blanks. The language of the document should be such that the intention of the parties is gathered without aid of any punctuation marks. In a document or in a conveyance, dates, sums, and numbers should be avoided and should be preferably stated in words, if not in both. Now, basically, coming to drafting of a composition of a deed, conveyance deed. According to me, a conveyance is normally divided into 13 parts. Remember, friends, 13 parts. If you only know the headings of the part, your document, you will never miss one. The first part of the document is the description of the document or description of the deed. As per British practice, it was always mentioned as indenture. But now a practice has come that the heading of the description of the deed is written as describing what the contents of the document would be, such as it could be a deed of mortgage, it could be a deed of sale, it could be a deed of lease or a deed of gift, and so on. The description denotes what is the intent and content of that document. Next is the second part is the date and place of execution. Generally, a date and place of execution is important, though not very essential, but in order to avoid any complexities and litigations later on, the date and place of execution is important. The date and place is more important nowadays because of limitation and jurisdiction issues. So a date first comes the description of document, next comes in the date. Now assume several people are there in a document and they have to sign at different places at different times or on different dates. Then how is it possible? It is easily possible that a person who signs the document at the foot of his signature puts in date and place where he has executed. Because commercial contracts normally now are executed at separate places at separate times. And hence the last date becomes the date of that document. The last signature date becomes the date of the document. Then comes an important aspect is the parties. Is the third aspect of a document. Friends, we have to give full description of the parties so as to make them identifiable. There should be no difficulty in identification of such a person. Now it is name, age, occupation, parentage, residing address, and as coming in now the PAN numbers and Aadhaar numbers. Give a clear identity of the practice. Friends, in English practice, there was normally a mention of caste or religion or sect mentioned, so and so of Hindu religion, and then residing at. I would say that today we should avoid giving in such particulars of a caste or religion, save and except if they are important, such as if there is a protection of for a particular caste or religion under a law, and it is desirable not to set it out in the names, but set it out in the recitals. Now, friends, when we say name, age, address, what about juristic persons? In juristic persons, you have to also give the details of the company name or the partnership name or the LLP name, and also under what statute they have been incorporated. And for their identification, we have to give their SIN number or LLP registration numbers also. Now, a normal question comes, this is all good for normal persons, natural persons and juristic persons. But what about certain persons under disability? Can't they do it? Can't they execute the document? Yes, they can. Either through a guardian or under the orders of the court. Here, you have to categorically mention that the document has been executed by a minor through his guardian under a court order dated so and so. Because that would be very important to bring in, to make the document valid and legal and not a void document. Because a person executing a document without having authority will pass on no title. If a document is executed by an attorney, he has to mention that he is acting on behalf of the principal. The principal's name has to be there and denoted, followed that he is acting as an attorney of that principal. It is also not advisable that that power of attorney should be annexed to your document so that it becomes a part and parcel of your document or your deed. Friends, when we are drafting conveyances, at all times we cannot say by names like Prasanna or ABZ or ACD. So we have to give a reference label to them. So in the name title, you say hereinafter referred to as the vendor or as a party of the first part or the party of the second part or a lesser, lessee, whatever. So that in your document below, it becomes easy to recognize the person who is giving a declaration or a covenant or any other aspect of the document. The fourth, after the names, the fourth important composition of a document or a deed is the recital part. Recitals are basically of two natures. One is a narrative recital and the other is an introductory in recital. Narrative in recital denote or comprises of past history, flow of title of that property, how it is transferred, and a set of facts and documents to show the title and relation between the parties. The introductory recitals are the explanation and motive of preparation and execution of a document. Friends, I must advise, or it is obligatory, that the recitals should be inserted with great caution, as they may control the operative part of the document and may stop certain parties from doing or not doing certain things if it is otherwise stated in the recitals. Nowadays, a tendency has come that we are not giving the narrative recitals because the document becomes big or conveyance becomes big. But it is advised or it is recommended that narrative recitals should be incorporated, as they give a detailed flow of title of that property and also provide for the relation between the parties. Assume after 40 years, if the document comes up before one, the parties would not be there to state how the title has flown to them. Therefore, in order to ascertain the flow of title at all times, narrative recitals should be incorporated. These recitals all, either in narrative or thereafter, should be in a chronological manner, so that different dates, acts and events are captured correctly and as to the vesting of the property in the person. Now, what are recitals and how we write them? Normally under the English law, it was whereas. We start with the words whereas and then continue ahead. And the next para, we say and whereas, and then go on saying and whereas and whereas. Now there is another style that has come up where we only say and whereas at one place at the top, and below it we start numbering by saying 1, 2, 3. This is a good way of drafting also, whereas you say only at one place and in a numerical form go down with all your recitals. The next important part which comprises of conveyance is testimony. It is also known as a witnessing clause. It is the clause which divides the deed from its operative part. That is from the names, recitals, and then comes in the operative part. Normally, it is easy to tell you that it begins with the words, now this deed witnessed, or now this deed witnessed that, or this deed witnessed as follows. This is the clause which is the witnessing clause, which actually divides the recitals and the operative parts. No doubt, this clause has in that sense no value or importance, but it is only objected to give a direction to which the deed is going to go. Now the sixth and the most important part of the conveyance comes is consideration and receipt. We all know section 10 of the Contract Act, which says that it is necessary for a transaction that consideration should be there. I would not go into details of section 10. Now the consideration may not always be money. It could be in case of gift out of natural love and affection. In lease, it is rent payable. Exchange, it would be some exchange of transfer of some other property. Followed by an acknowledgement of receipt of the consideration should also be embedded at that place also, instead of having a separate receipt. Taking of separate receipt is also a further safeguard that the consideration has passed. Then comes in the seventh part of your document, that is the operative words. Operative words are the real words which operate and govern the transaction. Bear this in. These words govern and operate the transaction. The operative words actually show what the transaction is all about. If it is a sale transaction, you would say the vendor absolutely grants, sells, transfers, conveys. If it is a gift, you would say grants, transfers, conveys by way of gift. This shows us what the operative or what the transaction is all about. Then comes in the parcels. Eighth fact or eighth portion of the deed is portions, parcels. This is a technical expression meaning description of the property transferred. Parcels mean property. Friends, due care and should be taken so as to include the property. We cannot leave any doubt what is being transferred, either by way of sale, lease, gift, or otherwise. A very slight mistake also in this description of property, that is parcels, could lead to disasters and litigations to come up. A description of the property should also be given in detail in the body as well as a schedule below to the document. Friends, when we say parcels, you should also attach maps or plans of the property so as to give correct identity and identification and precision. If possible, also write the length and breadth of a land if permitted or if possible. Here, it should be noted that the property flows also with certain rights. Those rights should also be written. Boundaries of the property should be clearly mentioned. Friends, in case of a building or a house, if the building has a name or a house has a name, the same should be detailed and written over there. Gram Panchayat or municipal house numbers should also be mentioned. Next comes in at the 9th place is exemptions and reservations which are there, which are agreed or obliged in a document. They follow after the principles. An exemption is something in existence at the date of transfer. If not expressly expected, would pass with the property. If you don't write anything, that exemption will pass along with it. Such as, if a land is bounded by a fence, that fence will pass through along with the land. Save and except, you don't write that exception. A reservation is also there, that is some restriction on transfer, where on an existing date of transfer, a new grant is created. It is that the transferor reserves with him certain right over the property. Giving an example to the same is right of way or right of taking water from a well, etc. Next, 10th part of a deed is habendium. This is familiar to what all we read as to have and to hold. It's come from a Latin word, Latin phrase, and is a clause of English precedence. To have and to hold is used by us, is what is to be had and used. By whom? It is to have and to use, to the use of the purchaser or to the use of the lessor. Some things. So what was that thing? Is the parcel. So here the word to have and to use takes importance. Who can use comes here. Then the 11th part of the composition is covenants and undertakings. When we enter into any document, there are certain covenants and undertakings that one has to see. For this, friends, we have to also know Section 55 of the Transfer of Property Act, 65, 67 of the same, or 108 relating to leases. These are where the rights and liabilities of the parties can be fixed and asserted. Basically, there are two ways of writing of covenants. Where there are multiple covenants, they may follow one another with the words and also used in between. That is, it goes in one flow, and you can use the words and also in between. And the other one is you write covenants of AB are as follows and give them a paragraph in a numerical paragraph. Friends, it is always advisable that the covenants of each party, maybe a purchaser, a vendor, a lessor, lessee, or donor, donee, should be clearly and separately be written. There may be certain documents or certain covenants which are mutual covenants. So those mutual covenants should separately be written and should not interfere in each other. Next, 12th important aspect of the document is the testatem. It is an English concept, but it is not at all an essential part of the document. It only denotes that the document operative part has ended. Giving an example of the same is where we write in witness whereof the parties have signed the document. It is not an important part of a deed, but it only denotes closure of a deed. The next and important aspect of a document or a deed is the 13th part, that is signature and attestation. The signature and attestation are very important. It is that all the parties to the document should sign to avoid any complexities. Without the signature, the title or the rights would not pass on. Now, consider a person who cannot sign, who is illiterate. Then what? What is the question? How do we do it? As per usage, the left-hand thumb of a male and the right-hand thumb of a female are to be embedded as signatures. Here, it is very important that another person or a witness or a scribe should make an endorsement to show that those thumb marks are affixed in his presence and are the same. Similarly, when the illiterate person is there who cannot read, or there's a blind person who cannot see, a scribe or another person has to explain him the document in detail, and he has to certify himself, the person who gives, who explains, that he has read over the document and the same was explained to him before he executed or before he put his thumb on it. As a general advice, as I already said, one should not keep any blanks. No typo mistake should be there. In case of any blanks, they should be filled in and proper signatures, initials should be taken so as the parties are bound to it. Friends, this becomes the signature part. Now we come to attestation. What is attestation? Attestation is a person, a witness who signs as an attesting witness to the document. He says that this document was signed in his presence. What is the importance of this witness? Certainly, as we all know, in litigation, the witness would come ahead and could depose that he was a party who has seen the document being signed. Certain documents such as will also take importance of witnesses who could prove the will. Generally, how are the signatures mentioned or written is we say signed and delivered. In certain, if it is a company, we say signed, sealed and delivered. This is not normally required. You could just say, you could sign and say a vendor, or you can say ABC. But where there is a witness, he has to say, you have to mention that he is an attesting witness, so and so, who signs. Only a person who scribes or who signs a deed as a person or a witness without mentioning a witness is not good in law. Basically, we have dealt with the 13 compositions or 13 facts how a document or a deed of conveyance is made and prepared. Once we know this, it is very easy that we could go ahead and draft a document. You have to take precision to draft. I would say writing the same on piece of paper and then getting it typed is always an ideal situation. But for time, you can directly type or dictate a document. And no doubt, one has to recheck the document at least twice so that the entire intention of the parties, what was to be there, should be embedded in the documents. Coming to further, when for drafting of a deed of conveyance or any document, certain rules of construction of documents are also to be taken into consideration. In my view, there are 4 precautions that one should take while drafting a document. The first one is that the deed should contain all material facts leading to an agreement with all the terms and conditions agreed between the parties. Second important aspect or precaution is that the intention of parties should be clear and plain and in simple words so that it would not give any inconsistency. The words and expressions which are used in their primary and natural grammatical meaning should be the same, should be retained same throughout the document. And the last is the recital should be kept at minimum and drafted in consonance with all the portions of your document, including the operative portion, so that there could be no misinterpretation of the document. Further, number of rules of interpretation have come in, which I need not go into detail, such as the description is not conclusive, but it shows a sum and substance of the document. A document is not weighed by title or contents, but at times courts have held that the contents have to be seen, so also the title of the document has to be seen, the name of the document has to be seen. Friends, we have to also remember section 91 and 92 of the Evidence Act, which give us how an evidence can be led in respect of contracts, grants, dispositions, and what are the exclusions in oral agreements. Why is this important is while drafting, you have to think about those lines that tomorrow if there is an issue or there is a litigation or there is a dispute, whether we are covered or how we could get covered, and whether the intention between the parties to the document is clear and conjunct. There is no ambiguity, there is no ambiguous nature anywhere in the document. Thirdly, the important rule is that a document or your conveyance has to be read in whole. It cannot be read in pieces and parcels. This is very important to know the contents of the document. And a new thing has also come in, that the surrounding circumstances that led to a conveyance being done is also to be noted at some point in your document, which has now attained importance in the era where certain acts have given certain priorities or certain they have given certain rights, such as slum cell or a distress cell. Because now Income Tax Act, if you see, you have to write in the market value. Otherwise, if the document is below the market value, there are penalties which are there under the Income Tax Act. So when there is a slum cell or there is a distress cell, you have to put in that surrounding circumstance also, so that you get protected under that other act, that is the Income Tax Act. Otherwise, where penalties could come in, or pandemic which has just come in, and where properties are now being sold even at a lower value than the market price, such surrounding circumstances should also be put. All legal terms that are used should be in the legal sense. For example, I'll give you, we use normally the term hairs, H-A-I-R-S. The term has to be used in its legal sense and not otherwise. In a company, for a company, you will not say which include its hairs, because a company will never have a hair. So use of legal terms in legal sense is very important. Certain references are made to certain documents by us, knowingly, unknowingly. We should take care and precaution that if a certain concept or a certain obligation or a certain right under that old referred deed is to follow in this document, it has to be written clearly and cogently. You can't only mere make a reference of an earlier transaction and say, now it's binding on me. No, you have to make a covenant to say that it is binding on the parties. These are the general rules that we have to take and keep it in mind. Friends, drafting of a document itself is a big topic. And I could only tell you the 13 important aspects how a document is to be made and to be remembered to be made with certain rules of interpretation. Summing up to it, friends, drafting or a draftsman is not a literally writer or an orator. He cannot divulge or indulge in any luxury of elegant variation of any concepts, terms. Friends, the skill of drafting of documents is by experience. Copy-paste method, now generally used by number of our friends, should not be followed or practiced. Sample drafts or drafts from books and from other lawyer friends should be used as a guideline and should be adopted in each case. Just to sum it up again, the 13 important concepts which I said of a drafting of a document should be remembered. If anyone wants the same, he could just request our friends I would circulate it to them through Maharera Association. And I hope my address would enlighten my friends about the title verification, its importance, and also drafting of the deed. I would like to thank all of you for inviting me for this webinar to address this august crowd. I thank the Bar Association of Maharera and Maharet. I also thank the RERA Practitioners Association, Pune. And I personally thank Harshad for inviting me here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prasanna. It was indeed great to hear you at length. So many doubts have been cleared. There are questions which are pouring in. So I will request the questions to be taken first.
Sure. Thank you, Arshad sir. Thank you, Prasanna sir. It was really enlightening. Being a solicitor myself, I know the importance of the ingredients that you have very clearly and crisply mentioned in this short span of time. To take you through the questions, sir, if I may start with the first question that was there in the chat box.
Yes.
This is a question from Viral. Please enlighten what are the mandatory clauses which should be incorporated in the conveyance, and most important, this which of course you have covered, but what will be the consequences of missing these requisite clauses?
As I told you, there are 13 important aspects which are to be covered in a conveyance. Missing any one, let us assume you miss the most important is consideration. Then your document would be void. It would not even be voidable, it would be void. So you cannot afford to lose these 13 important aspects which I enlightened you. If you miss, say, a restriction, then it was never the intent of the parties, which has come clearly in the document and which could lead to litigation in future.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from Mr. Jitendra. He says, can you explain the concept of REET remark in the old 712 extracts? Basically the meaning of it.
That is REET. REET means the status, whether it is class 1 land, class 2 land, or class 3 land. That is the REET. Okay. It denotes the tenure of the land, how it has flown.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So then there is a question from Mr. Avatar Singh. He says, what should we do when some document in original deed is found missing, but having complete recital contents page in comparison of the certified copy?
Sorry, I didn't get your question correctly.
So I think, yeah, so there are some gaps in the question. The way I look at it is that if there is some original document missing, but if we have the complete recitals in, say, a connected document, then what should we do?
First of all, if the original document is not found or is misplaced, let us assume it is misplaced, then it is always advisable that a complaint should be lodged with the police station as regards the misplacement of the document. A recital should be mentioned in your document that the original has been misplaced or lost or destroyed, whatever. And then the certified copy there too can be used. The recital is important basically because the documents can be mortgaged, are mortgageable.
Yes.
Therefore, this precaution should be taken.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, another question from Mr. Avatar Singh. If a notice of intimation is not given within 1 month, then what is the procedure or remedy, especially in respect with the lockdown effect?
He is talking about the intimation of mortgage.
Yes, I guess so. He's not specified it, but that is what I feel, sir.
Because that is the only intimation that is there now. Basically, when we say we are verifying the title, this is related to title. If a notice is not being given, that does not vitiate the mortgage at all. However, as a prudent person who is investigating title, he should call upon the party to show him the original documents. What does the notice say? That a mortgage, he has deposited the title deeds with ABC Bank or ABC Financial Company. So it is advisable that you verify the original documents so that you are clear that they are not mortgaged, and hence the notice of intimation would not come into play.
Yes, I think, yes, so especially in this lockdown effect, this is the best thing we can do, is
Yes.
improve our due diligence with respect to the originals. Very well, sir. Sir, one question from Mudita Kadam. When a natural guardian signs on behalf of a minor, is it valid without any court order?
It is again a mixed question, because a natural guardian can sign for a minor for his necessities, a natural guardian. But a guardian appointed by court cannot sign without having the order of the court.
Yes, yes, absolutely, sir. So then coming to some recent questions, there is a very long sort of a situation given and there are some questions. You wouldn't want to take that up, or that seems to be case specific?
If it is case specific, I don't mind taking one or two of them.
Okay, sir. So I'll just read the situation. In the year 1993, A purchased a flat from B, which the said building came under the regulating authority of CIDCO. Both the parties entered and executed the sale agreement, and a power of attorney was made at the time of purchase. Accordingly, all rights were given to the purchaser, but the said document was not registered with the registrar. That is, A did not pay stamp duty and registration fee. After a few months or years, B died. So, of course, B is the seller here. So now the situation is A didn't know the legal heirs of B. Now after 24 years, A wants to pay stamp duty and basically the regulations fees, he means the stamp duty maybe, and the registration fees. In this case, can A pay the stamp duty and registration fee for the same, the old sale document? Will CIDCO transfer the flat on their name as they are in possession of the same since last 24 years? What would be the procedure and any remedy for A?
It would basically depend upon the agreement what has been entered upon in 1993, coupled with the power of attorney. Now let us assume that power of attorney is for valuable consideration. Then that power of attorney survives the person after his death. So you can use that. So it is too case specific, and without going into the agreement and the power of attorney, we cannot say whether a conveyance can be done at this point of time.
But sir, basically the question seems to be directed as if we do not know the seller or the legal heirs of the seller. So it is more like a one-way transaction.
One-way transaction.
Can we get a clear title from CIDCO?
No, you cannot.
Yes. Okay. Uh, sir, then, so just in fact, for my knowledge, it's not in that question. Sir, what would be the remedy in such situation?
The remedy in such situations, according to me, would be to move the court for a declaration.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. So then a question from Dr. Indraj Neel. If a major by age person has lost his both hands by accident or in war of any mishap, how should we obtain his signature?
A very good question, because I told about male's left hand and female right hand, which is the usage. In absence of both the hands, the thumb impression of the leg, foot is taken.
Correct. Great, sir. Sir, some clarification is requested by Sujata. When a natural guardian signs on behalf of a minor, is it without that is the same question? And there is an example saying example builder development agreement between landowner and developer, where a part of ownership of land is of the mother and the part of that is to the minor daughter or son. With such development agreement be valid in absence of a court order. So here again, I think it is the same answer that you gave. It's a natural guardian, then it will be valid without the court order. So then there is a question from Dikshita. Latest 712 extract shown the name of their heir of original owner. Portion of property is in the possession of the other owner, that is Adivasi, and cultivating by them since 1957. However, their name does not appear in the 712 extract. Various unregistered documents such as MOU, agreement for sale, etc., with various persons executed by either owner or Adivasi are, I understand they are existing. Accordingly, various persons are claiming the property. Various revenue and civil litigations are yet to be adjudicated. However, neither party will raise any objection on publication of paper notice. In the said circumstances, what should be written in the title certificate pertaining to the entitlement of property?
You have to write all the limitations.
Yes. Yes.
All limitations.
And technically, the title can't be
clear.
Yes, sir.
You can reject the title.
Yes. Sir, a question from Amit Kumar. Conveyance of land and structure is different from multiple building project. And what about single or two building project? How can we do the deed?
See, there are a number of ways to do the deed. You can always convey the land, the structure separately. You can convey the land separately. If there are multiple buildings, I believe he is looking after talking about housing societies or big major complexes where there are
not specified, but that seems to be the answer.
That seems to be the question. Now you can convey the structure to one. You can form separate societies for each building, and you can convey them the structure and form a federation and convey them the land below it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, then a question from Mr. Sushil. Can you enlighten us what measures and legal aspects to be taken into consideration while drafting document in case it challenges in court?
That is exactly the 13 points which I discussed. Yes. Should be kept in mind along with the rules of interpretation.
And if there are any litigations, the same should be mentioned.
Yes.
So then I see this is the last question. So the intimation of mortgage is required only in bank mortgage, or is it necessary in case of mortgage favoring a private limited company?
Mortgage?
So
mortgage in favor or?
No, it is. I think it is by. So is it required only by in case of a bank mortgage, or even in case of a private limited company?
Intimation is given if a person takes a loan, it be juristic or a natural person. The intimation can be given of the mortgage.
Yes, sir.
Because nowadays we don't register the mortgage deed. It is only the intimation because it is now deposit of title deeds.
Yes, sir. So in fact, it will also be open for a private party to register the mortgage.
Yes.
So one more question, some questions popping up now. So this is a question from Mayuresh in relation to jurisdiction. suppose there are three parties involved in a deed and all purchaser and seller are placed in the same location, say Mumbai, and the description of property is out of Mumbai, then can the document be executed in Mumbai?
The document cannot be executed in Mumbai now.
Yes.
Earlier, there were provisions where a document could be executed in any of the metro cities for the whole of India. But now the jurisdiction has come that registration of a document has to be within that jurisdiction of the sub-registrar or registrar of assurances.
Thank you, sir. Sir, again, there's another question. Can a conveyance deed be done in favor of a society in federation through subdivision of land?
Basically, subdivision of land, it would entail basically to see the plans. Now, if your project is of multiple buildings and has been sanctioned as a single layout, then fragmentation or subdivision of land is not possible because it would be hit by the DC rules.
Yes.
Clearly.
Yes, sir.
So that is not possible.
Sir, another question from Rupali. If there are many societies and apartments in a survey number, then how can we make agreement for a big project? Is it possible?
If there are, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll just repeat the question. I think this is something you had actually answered, I suppose. If there are many society and apartments in a survey number, then how can they make agreement for a big project? Is it possible?
Yes, because the survey number may be big, but it would be further subdivided into some hissas or some plots. There would be some plotting scheme. So you'll have to identify that on a case-to-case basis and then see how the conveyance can be done.
Yes, sir. Or we can also write part in brackets and that.
Yeah, but again, when we are writing part in bracket, that is where I said the plans
yes,
should be annexed,
yes,
which
sir.
denote the boundaries.
And with shading and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you enlighten the daughter's right in the property after the commencement of the Amendment Act 2005? I think he's talking of the Indian Succession Act.
And
Yeah,
that will be a totally
I believe that
separate
would be a
subject
full
again.
webinar.
Webinar, I know. Absolutely.
And we will be
Absolutely.
definitely taking a separate webinar on the same.
Yes, sir.
That's an interesting question, but we will reserve answer of this question to the next webinar.
Yes.
We
Yes.
invite Mr. Darade again for that answer.
We'll be more than
Definitely,
happy
definitely.
if he chooses to
Yes.
come back. So,
Yes.
sir, this seems to be the questions at hand. So, I think I'll give the floor back to Sunil, I guess,
Yes.
to do a formal vote of thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure listening to you. And we hope we can see you more often. Thank you so much.
Sunil.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Arshad bhai. So, sir, it was indeed very informative, educative session. You have really enlightened us today, sir, deeply. I, on behalf of Bar Association of Maharera and Maharera Appellate Tribunal, Mumbai, and RERA Practitioners Association, Pune, extend my sincere thanks to you, Sir Prasanna Darade, sir. I also extend my heartful thanks to all the attendees who are attending this webinar and also entire panelists without whom this could not have been possible. Sir, we are really very glad that you have shared your thoughts, your insights, success mantras and techniques for title verification. At the same time, sir, you have clarified lots of issues, doubts, questions that were going on in minds of people, attendees regarding conveyancing, drafting. The most, sir, I personally liked your statement regarding reference to the words of James Stephen regarding crux of the drafting. The techniques of title verification, good, bad, ugly, was really a remarkable one too. Sir, it was really grateful and honor that you took out time, spoke to us today afternoon. As we all know, it is typically a habit of Punekars to enjoy a nice nap in afternoon session. Sir, further, I would also like to confess, we are really fortunate to have Harshad bhai as our bar president. He is really very good at choosing interesting topics for boosting knowledge and welfare of we advocates, not only we advocates, but entire society. Now today's topic on drafting of conveyance and this title verification was very, very helpful and educative too. We really feel privileged to have attended this today's session and boosted our knowledge, sir. Sir, I on behalf of my Bar Association of Maharera and RERA Appellate Tribunal, thank you very much and request you to allow me to conclude today's session.
Thank
Sir,
you.
I hope you today enjoyed the session as much as we did, sir.
Yes, I also enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are willing to have many more such sessions with you, sir. And I'm
Definitely.
sure you won't turn us down our request in near future.
I cannot turn down Harshad at any point.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Acha,
Thank you.
before I end today's webinar, I would like to remind everyone about our tomorrow's super interesting webinar on professional ethics. We will be having amongst us Advocate Rajiv Patil, the Senior Counsel, Bombay High Court, as the keynote speaker for the tomorrow's webinar. So I will request everyone to please join us again on the same time tomorrow for the topic professional ethics. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, sir.